check, check. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. Glad that you're here, and welcome especially to Monroe, who is here being passed around. Yeah. And Elizabeth and CJ, of course, of course. Obviously, we welcome these sounds of crying. They are a gift, to be sure. We're so happy to celebrate with you and to see this gift of joy and beauty and light. So, way to go. Way to get out of the house. Way to be showered, you said. I mean, hats off to you. Very impressive, very impressive. And you were early. You beat most people here. Not to rub it in, but it's true. You were one of the first ones in the room. Yep. That's right. Hey, I have a couple of things just to pass on to you this morning. We've been working on some building improvements related to the fundraiser that we did. You may have noticed that there were some boxes down in the entryway. Those are the new tables that are here. It's funny. So much joy over such a simple thing, and thank goodness that that's the case. So those are here. If you couldn't tell, of course, we're working on the cafe over here. We're trying to clean that up, and it hasn't been painted in a couple of decades almost. We have one more coat of paint needed, and so Joan is going to be here Thursday evening. There you are. Joan, what time are you starting? It says a time, but 6? It's whatever Joan wants to do, because Joan's leading the charge on Thursday night. 6 o'clock, she says. If you can't make it here at 6, come at 6:30. Can't make it here at 6:30, come at 7. If we had like 4 or 5 people, we'd be done. That's all that we need, and it's probably an hour and a half at most. This last coat will be faster than all the others, and so we're not asking for a ton of time, but we are trying to get it done before spring break. Because if it doesn't get done like this week, then we're at Easter Holy Week, and so it could be, we're trying to get it done if we can. And so if you have an hour on Thursday evening, man, we would be so appreciative of that. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is that we're doing another conversation on faith and politics in that intersection on April 13th. Just want to let you know that that's on your calendar. And then there are some meal trains that are happening for the Franks, related to Chris's surgery and to this beautiful family. Nothing more needs to be said. You can find those in your church center app. We are starting to hear that people are going to the app to find things. Well done. Well done. Sometimes you are going there and finding that we don't have what should be there. Our apologies. Our apologies. We are working on that, but we're grateful, because the idea is that is the place to find anything that's happening related to the branch. Okay. On Friday night, we had a volunteer appreciation, and it was such a lovely gathering. We had a pickleball tournament and played board games and ate some good food. And we also asked volunteers on Friday night to share one word about their volunteer experience. And we heard really just a lovely collection of things. Some people refused to write only one word, and they wrote a paragraph. It was fine. We had a little bit of rebellion happening. But people shared like words like together and joy and purpose and connection. And I think that's true. We are a community where we have a very high percentage of our folks serving in some way. And what that means is that the load is spread out. You know what I mean? Like there's not a small group of people carrying the load. It's a very wide, a lot of shoulders are helping to carry. So if you ever are curious about serving, or you want to know more, just talk to Teresa or I, and we'd be happy to help connect you to something that would be meaningful to you. Okay. Stephanie's going to lead us in a call to worship, and then we're going to sing a song this morning. So Stephanie, welcome. thanks for leading us. There's a part she's going to read and a part that we're going to read. Our part is in yellow this morning. I know, very easy to see. Let's join in.
Our God is a shepherding God. Our God will never stop searching for us. So if you feel lost, if you feel let us worship our with us God.
Why don't we stand if you're able, and we'll sing this together. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. And you have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I was your foe, still your love fought for me. And you have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. You know the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99, and I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. And oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
That love we have to receive if we are to be able to give it away. And we are a community committed to giving the love of God away, to being conduits through which the love of God moves. But we also have to receive it. We have to admit that we ourselves might be a bit lost from time to time, that we wander. And so Stephanie's going to lead us again. Stephanie, yep, come on back up. I know it. She's up and down today. She's going to lead us in a time of prayer and reflection, and then we're going to do a little bit more talking about how we be this love in the world.
Friends, in the Christian tradition, many have used lost and found labels to describe people out there versus people in here. Many have used lost and found language to create a damaging dichotomy that Christians are found and non-Christians are lost. But the truth is, each and every one of us is a little bit lost and a little bit found from time to time. Each and every one of us needs the love of the Good Shepherd. So join me in this prayer of confession as people who know both ends of that spectrum. Join me as we pray together. Your portion is in yellow and bolded. If God is a painter, let us be the brush. If God is a musician, let us be the song. If God is an architect, let us be the tools. Let us be the hands. Let us be the builders. But if God is a shepherd who never stops seeking, let us be willing to be found, no matter how lost we feel. Our God is never far away. Family of faith, we are all a little bit lost and a little bit found. We grumble, we push back, we doubt God, we doubt ourselves. We leave the flock and lose our way. But fortunately for us, God is a shepherding God who is always by our side. So hear and believe this good news of the gospel. No matter how far we wander, we can never wander from the bounds of God's grace. We are loved, we are forgiven, we are never alone. Thanks be to God.
Sometimes we are lost, I think, because of choices that we make. Sometimes, though, we are lost because the circumstances of life, of which we have no choosing, intervene and cause such disruption and dismay that we feel just out of sorts and, again, lost and confused. And maybe you've been feeling that a little bit lately with the events of the world, and especially in our country. And you're just not sure what to do or how to respond or what it looks like to be living in this moment as someone following Jesus. And last Sunday when we had this conversation on faith and politics, at the end I offered a framework that I thought was helpful. And so some of you have heard this already if you were there on Sunday, but even if you have, I think it's good to consider again. And it comes from Jamar Tisby, who's a historian, an author. He has this framework he wrote a book on how to be engaged in racial equity and that work. But the framework that you'll see here on the screen in just a moment, I think works anytime that we are bumping up against a systemic issue that's big and broad. This framework can be helpful. So he says, he offers this, that if you and I are to be people of love in the world, in turbulent times, we do need to stay aware of what is happening in the world. Because, of course, the tendency when times are turbulent is to disengage, to feel overwhelmed to the point of running or burying your head. And so he says we have to stay aware of what is happening. Now, all of us have to discern what the limit is for us, and that may change day to day, but he's inviting us to stay aware. And then to seek out relationships of solidarity. We talk a lot here about loving our enemies and holding tension. That is true. That remains true for us. And it's really important when the ground feels like it's moving under your feet to find people who you can lock arms with, who are trying to move towards that same world in which the kingdom of God, as we might often say, or love and mercy and compassion are the things that root us. We need to find people who are trying to move in that same direction, because in the turbulence, we might fall. We might need help getting up. We might need a shoulder to lean on. You've sensed this, yes? But again, there's a tendency to withdraw. And especially with these stinking things, the tendency is to just hole up and to do this. That is not relationship, right? We know this. But he says that this is really critical. And then the third piece is to remain committed to being engaged. This is all obvious stuff. This isn't like, oh, wow, I've never thought of that. No, this is stuff you probably know. But he lays it out, I think, in a nice way to just now ask yourself, am I committed? Am I engaged in some way? He does say, hey, listen, you need to stay in your lane. You need to find your lane. In other words, what you're passionate about or what you're gifted to respond to. Like, take today's moment. There's all sorts of things you could try and pay attention to and work for, and it's endless, actually. So you can't do it all. So what are you passionate about? What do you care deeply about? What are you skilled to respond to? Find your lane, and then stay in it. Remain committed to it. So I offer this to you. I offered it last week. I think it's helpful, and I wanted to offer it again as just this kind of checklist. Am I staying aware, or am I hiding? Am I staying connected, or am I withdrawing? And am I engaged? Am I committed to being engaged? And if not, maybe I need to go back up to the relationships. I need to circle back to people who I'm in solidarity with. We're going to need each other. All right. A little word there, a little bit of a framework again that I hope is helpful to you. Speaking of relationships, we're going to take a moment to just connect with each other here. And so I invite you to stand, back up, and to find somebody here this morning, maybe new, maybe a long old friend. Say hello this morning. We'll take a few minutes to greet each other.
right, everybody, I'm going to invite you to find your seats. Kiddos, if you haven't noticed, you are sticking around with us today. There are a couple of things. There are some children's bulletins out on the back table that have some activities and things to draw and write and color. There's also on the little back table, back here, the little red-shaped table, there's some pictures of sheep. That's your little clue about what we're talking about today. But you're welcome to go and use any of those things. The art cart is in the back for everyone. That is not just for kids. Everybody is welcome to use any of that stuff today. So it is our tradition at the branch to every last Sunday of the month to have kids stay in the room with us because they are an important part of our community as well, right? So we welcome noise and movement and all the things. And if there's noise from babies, we just celebrate it even more. So we are, if you've been around with us for the last few weeks, we're in the middle of this series called Everything in Between, where we're looking at these themes that could be seen as polar opposites and getting curious about those things and saying how maybe do they intertwine instead of being opposites. Or maybe there's this theme and everything in between, right? Everything's a bit more of a spectrum than these polar opposites that we maybe sometimes assume them to be. We've talked about the words intention and action, and we've been using those words throughout the series. We'll use those again today. We talked about stranger and neighbor, using the story of the Good Samaritan. We talked about action and contemplation, and looking at Mary and Martha and wondering about, instead of pitting one against the other, about what they have to teach us together. Last week, Janelle led us in a conversation about rest and growth using the story of the fig tree. These are all parables. Some of these are parables. And this week, we're going to talk about another parable and look at the themes of lost and found. We're going to talk about a parable that might be familiar to some of you. So we'll do some creative things with it and think a little bit differently about it, hopefully, today. So it is typically called the parable of the lost sheep. We're going to give it another name later because it's fun. And I think helpful in these really familiar stories to change a couple of things to make us think differently about it, right? So if you want to follow along, I'm in Luke chapter 15. The words will be up on the screen here. If you just want to listen, that's great too. Luke chapter 15, verses 1 through 7. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him is Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. Which one of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep." Just so, I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. As I was thinking about this story this week, I couldn't help but think of some childhood stories. Some of you know, some of you might not. I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, Iowa. Nearest neighbor was like a mile down the road, and we had, in all of my childhood, we were farmers in varying degrees, sometimes full-time farmers. Most of my childhood, we were part-time farmers. And we would have different livestock at different moments. Sometimes we had cattle, and they had this lovely little pasture where they could graze. And then we would have to bring them up to the barn for various reasons. To get them from the pasture to the barn, we had to walk them up the road. We lived on a gravel road. We knew every single car that drove by. We knew when the cars were driving by. So we were walking the cows up the road, up to the barn, right? We were herding them.
To me, this was not an odd experience, but to all of you, like, this is odd, right? You're walking cows up the road to the barn. But we had fences on either side to keep them from going into the fields on the side. But even then, these cows would just start straying and start going all the places. And we had multiple people, so everybody would take a cow and start to shepherd them back, right? I couldn't help but think of that story when I was reading about the sheep. We had, 20, 30 cows maybe at most, not 100. 100 sheep is a lot. And the shepherd in our story here had no fences, had no guardrails. So to me, I'm giving this guy mad props for getting 99 where they wanted to go, right? But 99 isn't enough. Just like if we had lost a cow on the way up the hill, that's not enough. You need all of them. These are all part of your flock, right? That one sheep certainly knew what it was like to be lost and found, maybe a little bit of everything in between. Because being lost and found, or even feeling lost or found, ebbs and flows. I think this story has more to teach us than just that one sheep, though, being lost and found. So we're going to consider those two words as it relates to all of the characters in this story, okay? We're going to start with this. Find a few people nearby. You're gonna talk to each other. I believe in you. You can do it. And think about the words lost and found. Once you have your groups together, I'll tell you which character we're going to look at. We're going to look at the shepherd, the sheep owner. We're going to look at the 99 sheep and the one sheep, okay? So get together with a little group of people, like a couple of rows together. Like if you all want to be, you're going to be the shepherd. That's who you are. You all get to be the shepherd. Think about the words lost and found and what those words might mean to the shepherd from the shepherd's perspective. How are we doing here? A couple of rows? All right. You all are going to think about the 99 sheep, okay, in whatever groups you get in. And you are holding down the back row real strong. I'm real impressed here, taking up all the chairs. You all are going to think about the one sheep, okay? Lost and found as it relates to the one lost sheep, okay? Same over here. We'll go backwards. You get to be the shepherd. You get to be the shepherd. You get to be the 99, and you get to be the one. Oh, sleeping baby. Sarah is out. She's like, I got a baby. I am good to go. All right, conversation among yourselves about what, from the perspective of whoever I told you, what are those themes of lost and found? What would that feel like? What would they wonder about being lost? People online, you get to choose your own adventure. So choose your favorite character. let's come back to the big space here. What were your conversations about? So let's start with the shepherd or the sheep owner. What did you notice about the words lost and found as it relates to the shepherd? That was you and you, I think, yes? Stress and responsibility. About losing and about now somebody's lost and now we have to find. Yeah. What's the right choice? If you leave the 99, are they going to get eaten to go find the one? You know, I'm super curious in this story. I'm like, why aren't there other people staying back? Thank you. I need some extra details, but we don't get them. What about you all back here? Yeah, that's an interesting thought. They're talking about the shepherd, what they care about. Are they caring that somebody's lost and wanting to really find that one person, right? Rory didn't care. There you go. Do I need to swap? Oh, hey, Chris is going to come around with a microphone. Don't be afraid. It's fine. It is helpful for those, let me just say this, the only reason we do it is so that people online can have a more full experience of being part of the community, okay? Now you have to put a microphone in your face, because I think I just guilt-tripped you, I apologize. All right, the 99 sheep, middle groups? All right, Aaron, you can do it.
All right, we were talking that, at least some of the discussion was a little bit about, well, what's the dynamic of this group? If we've been together for a while and we know how things work, is this one typical and do they do this often? We're probably really calm because we've seen this play out. We've probably seen the shepherd come back and we know everything's going to be fine. On the other hand, if we know the dynamic and this entirely breaks everything we know, that's a whole different story, right? This story has not played out. Maybe we should be worried, like, how long will this take? We might have known before, but we may not know now. So in one place, we may be entirely calm, and in another situation, we might be a little bit more, on edge because we don't know we haven't seen it before.
This is why I love looking at stories with you all, because there's new and different things that you pull out. I love that perspective. Thanks. Did you all have anything over here? Sorry, Chris, I'm going to make you run. I could have grabbed the other. That would have been easier.
I'll take a stab. We had some differing thoughts on how generous to be about our 99ness. Are we glad there's a shepherd who's going to seek out someone who's lost if we were ever to get lost, or are we rolling our eyes and going, oh, there goes Fred again? And he's,
We named him Fred. I like it. From now until the end of the morning, his name is Fred. Excellent.
So yeah, it makes you question what's our attitude as the 99 in the middle of this. So
yeah, thanks. Nice. All right, so Fred, perspective of the one sheep, groups here and here. Who wants to go first?
Laura, I thought you might. Yeah.
None of you are shy people. Okay. There are people in each group that are not shy people. How about that? Is that better? Yeah, I got you.
We just talked a lot about how maybe the sheep was very terrified.
Yeah. Nailed it. Yep, good. One word. Thank you, Laura, for being brave. Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable. It would feel vulnerable. Yeah. Terrified and vulnerable. Nice job. Oh, Elliot wants to add.
Well, I felt some sympathy for Fred and thought that, well, the story sort of sets up like that the lost sheep is equating to like the sinner who repents. But I thought, well, maybe he just got like distracted by some yummy tufts of grass, and the group moved on, and then he looked up and like, where is everybody?
Right? Yeah.
Is Mary not parallel to people's lives?
Sarah thinks this is confession time for Elliot right now. Um, it is, yeah, that's an interesting perspective, right? We don't know. Was Fred just a troublemaker, or was Fred just like, look at this pretty tree, right? And all of a sudden, he doesn't know where he is, and then he's terrified, and he feels vulnerable. Yeah. Well, there's one more character in this story that we didn't talk about, and that's the audience. Both the audience that Jesus was talking to in this conversation and us, right? So let's look at the audience that Jesus was talking to a little bit. So he was talking to a group of people that I imagine was pretty divided because there were tax collectors and sinners. I'm assuming they all sat together. And then there were the Pharisees and the scribes. In my head, they're in the back corner pointing and mocking and writing notes and all of these things, right? These are two very, very different people. The Pharisees and the scribes have some judgments about these other people, right? There is a commentary that we've been using for this series by a couple of people, Amy Jo Levine and Ben Witherington III. I love any names that have a second or a third. It's just fun. Anyway, these two, it's a Jewish woman and a Christian man, both New Testament scholars. So it's their combined commentary on the New Testament. It's very interesting. This is the Gospel of Luke. They talked about the sinners and the tax collectors this way, that they were people who violated the welfare of family and community and thus walked out of home and community. So their actions, their intentional actions, destroyed community instead of building it up. And this was a very communal, central society. So anybody who did anything to tear that down was seen as not great, right? They were like that sheep that probably wandered away, maybe a little intentionally, but maybe, hey, I'm going to go do this one thing. Oh, and then I'm just going to go do this one other thing, right? It was a little gradual trail. Maybe not super intentionally. The Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling that these people were allowed to be in Jesus' presence. They were grumbling that Jesus actually went toward them and spent so much time with them. They were grumbling that Jesus continually left the 99 to seek bread, to seek the one. And notice at the end here what Jesus says about that. He doesn't say, that's what happened, get over it. He says the sheep owner celebrated. He celebrated when he found the sheep on his own, and then he celebrated when he came back. He gathered his friends and his family and celebrated that one who came back. There's an image, I think I put the image in here, Mike, from Sanctified Art, this resource that we've been using here, showing the shepherd carrying the sheep. That was a striking image to me this week, because when we're herding cows up the road, we're like getting around them trying to shove them. Obviously, I can't carry a cow. Maybe I could carry a sheep, but also doubtful. But it's such a tender, compassionate, caring thing, in my view. But you're right. What perspective are we looking at? It could also be, I am sick of you, please get on my shoulders, right? But this to me looks like the caring, compassionate shepherd who just wants good for all of his sheep. So that's all the characters that we read about. What about us? What does being lost and found feel like and look like today? Feel free. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'll paraphrase that one. Maybe it's not the actual being physically lost, but not knowing who you are. Yeah. What else? What does being lost or found feel like? I can't get there fast enough. Say that again. Knowing somebody is looking for you. Yep. Anybody else? Well, we're going to take the rest of our time here this morning to consider what being lost and found feels like. I'm going to share with you a poem by a woman named Sarah R. Speed called The Good Shepherd about this story. It's up on your screen as well. Jesus said, "Who among you wouldn't leave the 99? Who among you wouldn't look for the one?" Someone in the crowd probably rolled their eyes. Someone squirmed and looked at their palms. Someone sighed and thought to themselves, "This man doesn't understand the business. What fool would leave the 99 to look for one?" But maybe God was not talking about us. Maybe God was talking about her own reckless love. Maybe God was talking about her own willingness to turn the world upside down for me. Being lost and found, or feeling lost and found, ebbs and flows, doesn't it? So I wanted to think about some of the ways that we can feel found when we're feeling lost. I think the last couple of weeks we've talked a lot about those things, about slowing down, about good practices, right? I told you we were going to rename the parable. So the two authors that I told you about earlier, Levine and Witherington III, talks about this parable and the two that come right after it with 4 words. And they say counting, seeking, finding, and celebrating. That's what they talk about when they talk about these parables. And I think that's really interesting because it's not just about being lost and found, but it's about all 4 of these things. So if we're thinking about feeling lost, feeling like maybe not physically lost, but just like you're not on your right footing, right? What would counting look like? Could we slow down, like Janelle invited us to do last week, to notice what is true? Seeking, those practices that help us feel grounded that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, those contemplative practices and the active practices that help us feel grounded and who we are, right? Maybe we have to ask for help when we need it. I don't like to do that. I don't know many people who like to do that, but sometimes we do need to do it. Finding, the beautiful joy of the finding. Have you ever been in that moment where you felt lost and all of a sudden something clicks and you're like, I'm me again. I can feel it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know this moment? Next time that happens, can I invite you to pause and to name it and to say, oh, that's what it feels like to be found, to feel fully myself. And then celebrate it. By yourself? Yes, absolutely. Call a friend. Call somebody in this room. Put a message on social media that is beautiful, that says, hey, this felt really great today. Celebrate. When I was writing this, I'm like, why is this hard for me to say I want to celebrate when I feel fully alive and fully myself? And I think there's a lot of, there's some interesting baggage that comes out every once in a while, even at this age, from growing up in a really conservative Christian environment. And I think that's one, because I was always told, make sure you name the things that are wrong. Make sure you name the things that you need to work on, that you need to do better. But don't tell me about the really good things, because that's bragging and that's not okay, right? So I don't celebrate enough about, I'll celebrate you all. I'm really good at that. And if you need me to celebrate you, I will. Come find me. But I don't know how to celebrate myself very well. So what might it look like to say, I feel great. You know what? I created a really beautiful space for my kids' friends this week that they feel safe and loved. I just celebrated with you in kind of an off-the-cuff way. But what might it look like for us all to do those things? Sometimes we are the lost and the found ones. And sometimes we're like the shepherd who get to go seek. But in order to seek the lost, we have to pay attention, right? So let's look at these 4 words again from an outward-looking focus. Counting. I really appreciated these words because I'd never really thought of that part of the story before. How did the shepherd know that one was missing? Well, maybe he saw them wander off, but maybe they got to their destination and he counted 99. Shoot, try again. 99. Shoot, right? So he had to pay attention. He had to stop and notice, and then he had to notice which one. He's like, okay, it's Fred. Yep, we know it's Fred, right? What makes us notice when something is missing? Many of you know my other job is working for the Alger Garfield Neighborhood Collaborative, and I get to listen to stories. It's community development work that if you don't know the neighborhood, you can't help the community to grow and develop, right? So I've been listening to stories of the neighborhood and the community, and a theme that has come up is the word invisibility. Katie Madison mentioned this one to me. Some folks at Brookside Elementary mentioned it to me, feeling a little bit invisible on the edges of the city or of the neighborhood. Katie talked about these borders that we don't really name, but they're there. That there are these pockets that are on the northeast side of the neighborhood, or the apartments, or the people who aren't middle-class white families that often are invisible in this neighborhood. I don't have the answers yet to how to fix that, but naming it is a really, really good first start, right? We need to name those things. We also need to notice the voices that haven't been present throughout history and the voices that are being actively silenced today in our current history. The indigenous voices, the black and brown voices, the women's voices. Noticing the voices that are missing takes time, takes intentionality, takes energy, because counting requires that we stop and pay attention. Seeking. Notice the search of the sheep. It sounds like it's a really quick search, like, oh, he noticed he was lost, and then he went and found him. Great. This was not like our neighborhood. This is not a friendly game of hide and seek. There were valleys and cliffs and crevices and places to hide. We don't know how long this search took. It could have taken a really, really long time. Here's what we do know. The shepherd didn't give up. We sang the song Reckless Love. The shepherd kept going at all costs to find the sheep. Seeking and searching is not easy. Sometimes it takes a really long time. It takes our willingness to travel through valleys and hidden dangers, and it takes exhaustion and tired feet. It takes time and commitment, and sometimes failure and starting over. Seeking out those missing voices takes time. It takes intentionality and energy, strength, and it takes openness to see things differently. Sometimes it takes a whole lot of courage. And most of the time, it takes people encouraging us along the journey. Finding. The shepherd lays the sheep on his shoulders and rejoices. Can you imagine it? Out in the middle of nowhere, like my farm in Iowa. He just screams and yells, and, well, maybe not, he might scare the sheep. But in his head, he's screaming and yelling for joy that he found the sheep. In the commentary resource that we've had for this week, a woman by the name of Dr. Megara Sharp has written a few pieces of information, and she tells a story in this week's commentary about students who find their voice in a classroom. Some of you are educators or work in education systems. You know what this is like, right? When a student finally finds their voice and contributes to conversation in their own way about how they finally feel free and feel like a valuable member of the conversation, right? And when the student finds their voice, I'm sure the teacher celebrates. But I think the class celebrates sometimes too, right? The 99 celebrate too. So celebrating, the shepherd celebrates on his own, and then he invites everyone else into the celebration. Friends and neighbors get invited to the party. The classroom celebrates. The community celebrates, because what was lost is now found. What was unseen is now seen and given a voice and given space to be fully themselves. Maybe we didn't even know a voice was lost, but when they're found, we will never allow that voice to be silenced again, because we see how much diversity of voices and opinions and people builds community instead of tearing it down. And we see how silencing those voices tears down community instead of building it. So we celebrate when those voices, when those people are found. We bear witness to what is found. And those celebration moments, here's why I think they're so important, because they remind us of what was found. The celebration reminds us of what was once lost. And that celebration reminds us that we're not done seeking yet. Because as Dr. Megara Sharp says, none are found until all are found. This parable wraps up in a neat and tidy celebratory bow. But I'm guessing, as many of you mentioned earlier, that a herd of 100 sheep probably doesn't always stay together. This is not the last time the shepherd's going to have to go look for the sheep. There's continual counting and seeking and finding and celebrating. It is a cycle for sheep, for shepherds, and it is a cycle for us that most likely won't end in any of our lifetimes. But we keep going, and we keep joining in the good work of others. I wanted to share with you today a few examples of the good work of others who are finding, seeking the lost, and ways that you can get involved in that if you would like to. Today, this afternoon, there's a rally downtown for the Trans Day of Visibility. From 1 to 3 downtown, people are going to stand up and say, we will not let these voices, we will not let these people be unseen. We will continue to lift them up. You heard Alyssa a couple of weeks ago talk about a new group of neighbors in this immediate neighborhood who, after the election, said, we need to do something. So let's just get together and start talking. They've done a couple of things. They've done something with Brookside, because I told them that that Brookside was feeling invisible. So they did something to seek them and to find them. If you want more information, there's a Zoom call this afternoon. Alyssa was about ready to say it. Go talk to Alyssa if you would like more information on that, and you can learn more about how to get involved. They're also doing some work with Alger Middle really soon that will share that as well. There's also in this neighborhood, I just learned of a green initiative. I can't remember what they're called. Alger Garfield Green Team. How could I forget that? About environmental impacts in our neighborhood and how we can do better together. That's coming up this week if you want more information. I only know all of these things because somebody here told me about them. I only know all of these things because I'm counting, right? I'm stopping to pay attention and to listen. And we all have those circles. We all have circles of influence and information if we're only paying attention. Maybe you're the one who feels lost today. Oh, friends, that is understandable. I feel lost a lot lately, wondering how I can do anything about the pain and the hurt that is so visible and prevalent around us. Wondering if my search is worth it. Wondering if I'll ever actually find that one sheep I am desperately looking for. Or some days wondering if I'll ever be found again. Friends, that's why I cling to you all, to this faith community, because your stories give me hope. It gives me hope to keep looking or to trust that I will be found again, over and over and over again. Because maybe none are found until all are found. We've been using these intention and action boards throughout all of Lent, and we're going to give you a couple of minutes here to do that today again. There are yellow note cards nearby and pens. There are more up here if you don't have access to one. What are the things that you hope might be different 6 months from now, 6 weeks from now, in 2 weeks? That's your intention. As you think about lost and found and whose voices have been silenced and what voices, who you are seeking, what is your intention? So I invite you to write that on one piece of paper, and in a second here, come and place that up on the boards. There are clips in the bowls beside the boards. And if that is the future you want, and you feel God stirring you to work toward, what is one step you can take? Not all of them. This is not the 10 steps to I found the sheep and we're going to celebrate. What is one step that you can take? And I invite you to put that on the action board here as well. We'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then we will gather back to share communion.
invite Brian and Stephanie up. They're going to lead us in communion here this morning.
As we prepare to share communion together, we invite you to reflect with us on what this table helps us see about God's determined love.
In this morning's parable, the shepherd does what no one expects. He leaves everything behind in order to find one who is lost. In this meal, we remember the same unexpected movement.
Jesus leaves behind power and privilege. No one could have imagined the Messiah doing so. Certainly the world would be made right by Jesus using his power to dominate and control.
But in this bread, we see and feel a different story, a life surrendered and laid down, even broken.
And in the cup, we see and taste a different story, love poured out for the sake of the world.
May this meal today call us to our heart and mind the unexpected, stunning story of God's love.
These are the gifts of God for the people of God.
We invite you to come forward and receive the bread and the cup. There will be a station in the front and in the back, and if you need or prefer a gluten-free option, come up front. As you come up, someone will give you a piece of bread or a gluten-free cracker and a cup of juice, and then you can take them both back to your seat because we will all take and eat together. And we like to say every week that this is an invitation, not an expectation.
And if you're at home, you can get your bread and cup ready. We'll share them both together in just a moment.
And we do need some volunteers to come, our usual cadre of people.
Maybe a few more. We got 2, maybe 3 more.
Couple, anybody? Just as Jesus broke bread with his disciples, we break bread together today, remembering that God has the power to make what was broken and torn whole and new. Friends, take and eat.
And just as Jesus shared the final cup of Passover with his disciples, we shared this cup, a cup reminding us that when we lay down our power for the sake and welfare of another, redemption and shalom come into the world. Friends, take and drink.
We'll pass these baskets around. You can put your cups in them as they make their way to you. And we're going to sing one more song this morning before we depart. So let me invite you to stand and join us in that.
It's there in the newborn cry, there in the light of every sunrise, there in the shadows of this life, your great grace. It's there on a mountain top, there in the everyday and the mundane, there in the sorrow and the dancing, your great grace, oh such grace. From the creation to the cross, there from the cross into eternity, your grace finds me. Yes, your grace finds me. It's there on a wedding day, there in the weeping by the graveside, there in the very breath we breathe, your great grace. The same for the rich and poor, the same for the saint and for the sinner, enough for this whole wide world, your great grace, oh such grace. From the creation to the cross, there from the cross into eternity, your grace finds me. Yes, your grace finds me. There in the darkest night of the soul, there in the sweetest songs of victory, your grace finds me. Yes, your grace finds me. Your great grace, oh such grace, your great grace, oh such grace. The same for the rich and poor, the same for the saint and for the sinner, enough for this whole wide world, your great grace, oh such grace. Oh, oh, oh. praise, and I'm breathing in your grace. Forever I'll be breathing in your grace, and I'm breathing out your praise, and I'm breathing in your grace. Forever I'll be breathing in your grace, and I'm breathing out your praise, and I'm breathing in your grace. And forever God, oh, 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 yes, your grace finds me. Yes, your grace finds me.
The line that grabbed me was enough for this whole wide world. We're led to believe that there's not enough of anything, and it's just not true. There is enough grace for you and for me and for everyone you encounter this week. So we're going to say this blessing to each other this morning. You'll notice that part of the words here are yellow. That's your part, and the other parts I'm going to say. This is the same blessing we've used the last few weeks. We're just using it a little differently today. So we're speaking these words to each other. As you leave this place, friends, may you find God in every messy middle. May you know the world is bigger than two sides. May you trust that you are made in the image of God, and therefore you contain multitudes. So may you move through this world with an open heart, with a curious mind, and with a confidence that you do not go alone. God is with you in the mountains, in the valleys, and everywhere in between. Believe that good news and go in peace. Go in peace, friends. Thanks for being here this morning. Good to see you.